On this episode of Fleet Friday, we will be looking at one of Cornwall Fire and Rescue's aerial ladder platforms, or ALPs as they're known. So Cornwall Fire and Rescue has two of these vehicles, one based at Newquay and one based at Truro Community Fire Stations. They are based on MAN TGS chassis with a 10.5 litre straight six engine producing 360 brake horsepower. The running weight of the vehicle is 24.5 tonnes, which makes it one of the heaviest vehicles in our fleet. The overall length of the vehicle is just over 10 metres, with a width of just over 2.5 metres and a height of 3.6 metres. The bodywork was done by John Dennis Coach Builders, with the boom package being provided by Vima. The maximum height that this vehicle can operate at is 34 metres. The vehicle is also equipped with a rear steering axle. This means that in the tight lanes of Cornwall, the driver has the maximum manoeuvrability for the size of vehicle. So the rear wheels will actually turn to create a tighter turning circle. So to simulate this, we've turned the front wheels to the right, and the rear wheels are actually turned to the left. So this means that the turning circle is decreased, which means manoeuvrability is greatly improved. It may not seem like a lot that the rear wheels have turned, but it makes a huge difference. Now up in the cab of the vehicle, we can see some of the controls used for the ALP side of the vehicle. So this is the master switch that supplies the power to the boom package, as well as some controls for the rear lighting for the deck of the ALP, and what we call the landing leg lighting. So this illuminates the area that the outriggers are going to landing for nighttime use, and some warning lights here to tell the driver that the jack legs are not raised, or it's not in the transport position, there's a door open, or the chassis lock is not come out. So moving across, we've got the TomTom that every vehicle is fitted with, and a 360 degree camera. As I say, this is one of the larger vehicles and the heaviest vehicle that we have on our fleet, so we have a 360 degree camera system to aid the driver with navigating, especially moving into position on the incident. And then around here we have the MDT, or the mobile data terminal, so the officer in charge of the appliance can call up information on the incident ground, such as CAD drawings of the building and such like. Moving on up, we've got the controls for the siren, the main scheme radio, and then above the driver is the control panel for all the blue lights on the vehicle. So we have a 999 function. So this is used when the appliance is driving to the incident. So this puts on all the blue lighting as well as the siren. And then we have the AAS button, which stands for attendance at scene. So this is pushed when the appliance arrives at scene. It will turn off some of the warning lights, turn off the siren, and also put on the red warning lights on the rear of the appliance, as well as the ability to override some features, select which siren the driver wants. And these controls here are for the scene lighting, an inhibit for the rear lights, a test function, and the reverse and horn cutoff. So starting on the off side of the vehicle, the first locker we come to is the diesel locker. So this houses the diesel tank for the vehicle, but it also houses some of the items for the boom package, such as the main filter, the main valve block, the battery backup pump, and a radiator for the hydraulic oil. Moving along to the next locker, we've got some road cones. So these can be used for making a safe area for the ALP to work in, maybe a landing site for the cage if it needs to come back down to ground level. As the item in the blue valise is a collapsible stretcher. You'll see a bit more about how this is used later on when we take a look at the cage, but it can be used for rescuing persons from height. And then the silver tray along the bottom houses one of the wooden jack pads that the outrigger sits on to spread the load evenly over the floor. Moving up to the next locker, we've got a folding ladder, and then above that on the slide out tray some blue MoFlash lighting, again create a safe area or a warning area, whichever the case may be, using blue warning lights and some barrier tape. Moving along to the next locker, we've got some electrical gloves. This is an emergency override handle for the monitor on the cage. If something were to happen with the hydraulics, it can still be manually operated by the firefighter. The vehicle towing eye, a small crowbar, a hand lamp, and then a jumper cable. So this can be plugged into the side of the aerial ladder platform, and the other end can be connected into another appliance on scene to provide electrical power in the case of prolonged use of the battery backup pump. Another appliance can supplement the electrical supply to the ALP using this. So moving on to the next locker, up the top we've got a box containing drinking water in bottles for the crew, a box containing 3 life jackets, 2 wheel chocks, so these are used to make the vehicle safe when arriving on scene before the outriggers are deployed and the vehicle raised off the ground. And then down the bottom there we've got 2 general purpose lines, so one's 15 metres in length and the other is 30 metres in length. And then below that again is another housing location for the jack leg pad. So now around the back of the vehicle, this locker contains all of the controls used to control the outriggers on the vehicle. So the yellow wander lead we can see here is what we call the auto jacking control. So this system raises the vehicle off the ground and gets the vehicle level automatically. So we've got controls for the rear outriggers, the front outriggers, and then to bring them all back in again, as well as a leveling button and a button to raise all the outriggers up to stow them. And then moving along, we've got an emergency stop button. Below that, the levers are what we can use when we're manually jacking the vehicle. So if for whatever reason the auto jacking system can't be used, say that the jack legs have to be staggered to navigate around a parked vehicle, we can do this using the manual jacking controls. So each of these levers controls an aspect of the jacking system. And then to each side of the locker we have 2 inlets, so one there and one there. So this vehicle doesn't have its own fire pump and it doesn't have its own water tank, so it relies upon other vehicles on scene to provide it, or other pumping appliances on scene to provide it with water. So another appliance will connect 2 lamps in, one to each of these deliveries, and then supply the ALP with the water that's needed. So moving on to the near side of the vehicle, to the near side rear locker. In these grey boxes we store harnesses for the firefighters to wear. So whenever you're working in the cage you need to wear a safety harness, so we carry an assortment of harnesses for this purpose. And then in this box down here we've got some lifting equipment, so we've got some straps and shackles that the firefighters can use to rig up a lifting system if required. The ALP does have a limited lifting capability. Making our way further down, we can see the steps used to get up onto the bed of the ALP. So we've got some fold out steps there. And then moving along to the next locker, although, as I've said previously, this vehicle does rely upon other vehicles at the instant, other pumping appliances providing it with water, it does carry its own selection of hose. So this carries 6 lengths of 65mm hose, and then, as you can see below that, again in the longer silver box this time, is the 2 jack-in pads for the near side of the vehicle. Moving along to the next locker, up the top we've got some safety helmets, and then in this box down here we've got some branches and some short lengths of hose that are used in the cage to maybe damp down hot spots from above, a short section of hose reel tubing, and a gill mat branch, 2 short lengths, and a Rosenbauer branch. So that concludes the tour on the locker tour portion of the video. So we'll now get on to the boom. So now moving on to the boom package of the ALP, which is the white section along here. As previously mentioned, this has a maximum height of 34 meters. So at the back of the vehicle here, this is what we call the base operator, or the turntable operator. So this is where they sit. Whenever there is a firefighter in the cage, there needs to be another firefighter sat on the base operator's position. Moving along, we can see the cage. What we'll do in a minute is we'll break this out and give you a bit more of a detailed look at the cage. So now on the other side of the ALP, as you can see here, we've got a hydraulically driven generator. So this produces 110 volts, which is used in the cage for power tools and also does the floodlighting. Okay, so what we'll do now is we will raise the boom, break the boom out so we can have a closer look at the cage. So this is the cage portion of the aerial ladder platform. It's got the ability to carry a couple of firefighters and a maximum cage load of 400 kilos. It's also got the ability to carry a stretcher on this fold-out platform at the front with a safety bar around the top. So if anybody needs to be rescued from height, they can be put onto a stretcher and then securely stowed on the front of the cage to bring them down to ground level. We've also got some high-powered flood lighting to the sides, front, and underneath for scene illumination at night. Moving on to around the side, we've got the monitor. So this is a hydraulically controlled monitor, so it can be controlled from the cage, the turntable base operator, so that the firefighter doesn't have to be in the cage if it's only used as a water tower. We've also got a delivery to the side for damping down using hose reel branches if need be. And then moving on around the side, as you can see, plenty of access points. So you've got an access door at the side, the rear, and on the other side. Underneath here is the controls. So we've got the controls, we'll go over them on the base operator's position a bit later. And 110 volt sockets over there for any power tools that may be needed to used at height. And then moving around here, this is the water pipe. So this is what feeds the water to the monitor, and that cabinet there is where all the computers are stored for the cage leveling and all sensors like that. So this is the base operator's seating position. So we will get in and show you. So now this is the controls at the base of the ALP. So starting off on the lower portion, the two main items are the control levers. So the left control lever controls the downward movement of the main boom, the upward movement of the main boom, the inward movement of the cage boom, and the outward movement of the cage boom. On the right control joystick controls the telescope in, telescope out, rotate left, rotate right. The buttons along the lower portion here are mainly used in the emergency override situations. So if something was to happen to the engine of the vehicle, we've always got a way of lowering the vehicle back down to the ground, bringing the boom package back down. So these buttons are controlled with that. This key decides who has control of the boom package. So when it's turned to the left, this means that the base operator position, the position where I am sat now, they have control. If then the firefighter in the cage, who say they're trying to guide the cage into a building, they have the greater visibility of the area that they need to be working in. So the base operator can then transfer control over to the cage. We also got the ability to start and stop the engine of the vehicle from up on the base. So moving up, we have an emergency stop button, a switch to control some lights on the display for nighttime operation, and a knob to turn on and off the intercom system where the base operator can talk to the cage. So moving on up to the top portion of the controls, the main feature being the LCD screen. So this displays vital information that we need to be able to operate the boom safely. So on this screen that we've got here, the yellow portion is the maximum area of movement that we can work within. And if we can go through some different screens, this is an aerial view of the same sort of information as displayed on the previous screen. This one here tells us which movements are allowed. So dependent upon the green, amber, red arrows indicate which movements of the boom we're allowed to make. This one here shows our outrigger screen. So at the moment we're in what we call the transport position. So this is the position used to drive along the road, so all the jack legs are in. But if you was using the ALP elevated, you can keep an eye on this screen to make sure that you have ground pressure on all of your outriggers. So we also got some buttons along the side. So we have our battery backup pump button, a transport driving position, so this brings up some instructions on the screen of how to get the vehicle to the transport position. We have cage rotation, so we can actually rotate the cage independent of the boom to get in closer to a building, say. We have a horn. Some cage, so this is the lighting on the cage. So the flood lighting aspect controlled by that button. The generator, so you have to enable the generator before you can use the flood lighting because they run off of 110 volts. This is a round rung movement button, so if you need to use the emergency ladder along the side, you can align the rungs for a safe access and egress. And then down the bottom here we have our cage load indicator, so it tells us what the maximum cage load is allowed, and we can change that by using this button here. To the right are the controls for the monitor. So this has previously been stated got a hydraulic controlled monitor, so everything can be controlled by these buttons. So we can raise the monitor up, lower, rotate left, rotate right, and then these two buttons you control the flow of the water. So you've got a jet or a fog in action. So yeah, that's the controls we use to control the boom of the ALP. These controls are also replicated in the cage as well.